Welcome to today's webinar, courtesy of the Kentucky Small Business Development Center in Louisville. Discover no-cost, valuable business services to help you thrive, whether starting your entrepreneurial journey or scaling your existing business. We have the resources and expertise to help you succeed. For more information, please visit our website or text 502-977-5800. Thank you for joining us today. Feel free to use the chat feature to ask questions or engage with our speaker. Let's get started.
Hi, welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us on another Toolkit Tuesday. I'm Dave Edcombe, the director here at the Louisville Small Business Development Center. So great to see you on a great Tuesday. As always, I'm joined with my good friend and coworker, Janet Flaw. Hello, Janet.
Hi, Dave. How are you doing today?
It's a wonderful day. It's a wonderful Tuesday here in Louisville, Kentucky.
It is. It is. I had to turn the heat on today, Dave. It was too cold. It's too cold.
See, you're talking my language, because there's nothing I like better than a good hard winter, you know. That's where I really enjoy a good hard winter. But anyway, so thanks for joining again. And just to make sure that you can see and hear us and everything's working well, if you look at the bottom of your screen, as everybody gets kind of settled in here, I can see where I kind of pop it in. But if you look at the bottom of your screen, you should see a toolbar. And if you don't, just hover your cursor over that. It should pop right up, and there you'll see the little chat button. If you wouldn't mind just clicking that for me, and then typing in your name and where you're joining from, so I can make sure that everybody's out there. I can kind of see you popping in. Everybody's kind of coming in here, filing in. But I do like to see where everybody comes from. It's really interesting for me, and I do thank you guys for joining us. I mean, we could, there is Jim O'Neill. Hey, Jim, we need to get caught up, man. We really do. I know I said that last time, and I'm glad you joined again, so happy to, I had to send something out here soon, get us on our calendars. Hey, Tammy from Lexington. Hey, Terrell from Louisville. Lucy from Louisville. Bill. Paula from Williamston. Hey, Chris, I need to call you too. I was just put you on my notes this morning. Hey, Brandy, Louisville. Charlie from Shelbyville. Leslie from Wheelersburg, Ohio. Interesting. Thanks for joining us, Leslie. Well, as people kind of get in here, we'll go ahead and get started a little bit. But, you know, whenever you're starting a business or in business, one of the big questions we get asked a lot about is, you know, accounting and how to set things up. And everyone's go-to software is QuickBooks. And, you know, we thought it'd be a great idea to have someone who is a QuickBooks expert come and kind of talk us through the setup process and walk us through that. So we've invited Bill Brantley, our good friend. Bill, are you out there?
Yes, I am. Can you see me? Let's give her a shot.
Yet.
Okay.
Here you come. Here you come. There we go. Oh.
There we go.
There we go. See, that's the problem I have.
Yeah, it's slow.
So Bill is a QuickBooks advisor. He is an expert in all things QuickBooks. And, well, and you know, as we go through, you know, this today, if you have any questions or comments, especially specifically to you, now's a good time to have those questions answered by a true expert. And so Bill's here to help us out. He'll kind of run through some setup things, and then let's just generally dive right into QuickBooks and see if that works for us. So Bill, I'm going to turn it over to you, and let's just get going.
Okay, great. And, you know, appreciate the expert label. I'm better with the software than the US tax code because it just constantly changes on me. And I tell you, as I talk to folks, you know, it's just, you got to keep up with it. And I try my best. So I'm going to give you some suggestions here, but even QuickBooks is changing because they're trying to shove more AI into it. So I was looking at this today and I kept getting these warnings. Oh, this screen will change. So maybe what I show you will change in a month. Okay. So I'm going to try to see if we can share here. And just
the only constant is change, right, Bill?
Oh, absolutely. So can everyone see my screen?
Looks great.
Okay, great. Okay. So yeah, I'm a pro advisor. And what that means is I've been certified in the actual software itself for QuickBooks. So I can help you set it up and all that. In a lot of cases here, if there's something kind of tricky with your tax situation, and you know, there's usually something, everyone has some kind of wrinkle. talk to an accountant. I'm not an accountant. I'm just a bookkeeper. So I haven't really gone through the accountant training, even though I had it. Actually, it's kind of interesting. Back when I was in college, as a paralegal, we went through several semesters of bookkeeping because we were supposed to be keeping books for our law offices. So that's where I kind of take it. And, I've been running my own business for a while and kind of learning as I go, more on the job training for myself. So what I'm going to talk about, let me see, get this guy going. There we go, is just 10 steps and give you some ideas here. And of course, you can set up how you like to set up and you see what works for you. So we can do that. And we'll have a good informal discussion here too. So I may at some intervals just say, hey, what's in the chat? What are people asking in the chat? And what are people talking about so that I can make sure I can answer and be helpful to you. Okay. So the first step with anything when I help someone set these up is I take a look at their dashboard. And the dashboard essentially is what you first see when you log into QuickBooks most of the time. And you can see it on the side here. And if you can see where it says dashboards, it cares here where my cursor is. Everyone can see the cursor, right? See what I'm doing? Okay. So what the dashboard does is just give you a quick view of your business and how it's doing, what invoices, all that kind of stuff. And many times folks don't know this, but they can change or customize their dashboard. So if you have something you're especially interested in your business, so for example, with my business, I always want to keep up with my accounts receivables and my accounts payable. So I can just click these two guys and have that pop up on my dashboard and show me how I'm doing with my cash flow, because I'm a kind of a cash flow heavy business and I want to make sure things are coming in and just want to get a notice of that. So you can get these different widgets here that you can put on there. And in about a few minutes, I'll talk about the marketplace, and they have an app marketplace, and you can even add more widgets. The biggest thing when I help people with their dashboard is just making sure what is the most important stuff you need to know about your business, because you can go widget crazy and you can add more and more widgets. And after a while, you're just getting more noise than actual signal. What is really important? You get all this stuff kind of lost there. So you need to think about what is it that I need to know every morning when I get up. And it's kind of like thinking about a health check, right? When you go to the doctor and you get a health check, they check your blood pressure, they check, your pulse rate, all these different things, the little thing they stick on your finger to check the oxygen, and they just want to get the vital numbers. So what are the vital numbers of your business that you need to think about? And when we talk about understanding the dashboard here, of course, it's your command center, and it helps make decisions that morning for you or what you're doing that day. And also it gives you a good instant view of your business's financial health. And the idea here is to see how your cash flow is going, how is money coming in, how money is coming out, because that's essentially what we do with our business, right? We have money coming in, money coming out. Where is it coming from? Where is it going? And we'll talk more about that theme as we go along. And you want to take a look on the left-hand side here. Just if you've not used QuickBooks before, if you haven't used it that much, you really want to take time to explore the menus here. And of course, you can alter these menus also if it helps you. And there's all kinds of different things. You can really customize this the way you need to. And you want to take a look at, the tasks, the transactions and such. And when you break down QuickBooks, it's pretty much of a simple model here. It's what kind of sales are, what kind of sales are you having? What kind of things are coming in? What kind of cash, the receipts, the invoices, and also what you're paying out. So if you can think about this and what we've called, and I've done this before when I've helped organizations build before, federal agencies too, and state agencies and also businesses, the idea of the concept of operations. What's coming in? How do you transform it to make value? Then what goes out? Okay. And that's what I always kind of keep in mind there. So I see, let's see, is the chat popped up? Yeah. Let me see here if there's any questions here. Nope. Okay. So anytime, go ahead and pop in your questions in the chat and I'll be glad to take a look at those. And we'll go ahead and jump into the second one. Get back here. And one of the things that I work with folks on is just understanding your business. So up at the left-hand side, if you actually have QuickBooks open, or if you don't, if you take a look at the top left, you'll see this set of information, your business fee, contact experts, all those kind of things to help is great. But you'll see this little gear icon. I don't know why they hide it like that. But anyway, the gear icon is usually on the very far upper right. And if you click on it, these are settings that you can use right now to work with. And one thing about QuickBooks, there's multiple ways to get into things. So for example, and we'll talk about a little bit later, like the chart of accounts, you can go to transactions and get chart of accounts, or you can do it through the gear. So if you don't know one way to get into QuickBooks, or if you like to do it another way, that's fine. And this is, just a great way to understand how this tool works or the system works here. And one of the things with the tools here, I tell folks is, this is a good one here. And of course, you're going to get a little bit of selling for you, okay? But the help helps you out there. The resolution center is good. And when we go to your company, I use this help me kind of set up the initial information for me. So like, who are my customers, who are my users, all those different things. So the first thing I do when I help someone set this up is look at, well, what is your accountant settings like? And we wanted to look at your company, okay? We want to get your company info in there and the basic stuff, because your name, your address, all these different just basic pieces of information about your company is going to go into your invoices. It's going to go into, if you set up to be paid online, it's going to be part of that. There's all kinds of things that are basically run by what kind of basic information you have about your company, all right? And right underneath this, and if you're like me, taxes, always very worried about my taxes. I want to make sure I make my taxes all set up and ready to go. And, I don't have to owe the IRS or anything at the end of the year. That's why I like to go to the legal info and make sure that's set up correctly right from the start so that my taxes will flow a lot smoother for me. So again, you get your basic information up here. You got your legal info right there. And one of the things I tell folks is think about what kind of company you have. Now I have a, let's see here. It's a corporation, a subchapter S. And if you're familiar with the subchapter S, you know that there's certain kind of tax ways you're taxed and ways that you're treated. Like, for example, a lot of folks don't know, with a subchapter S, you can be the sole employee and the sole owner of the company. And as the employee of the company, you actually had to pay yourself a salary. And the IRS looks for that. So one of the things I do is when we talk to somebody, I tell you, okay, what your business type is. We really look at this because you see, like for sole proprietor, well, there's Form 1040. There might be a partnership that's Form 1065. Those are the IRS forms. And it's really worth your time to take a look at those, look those up on the internet, take a look at what 1065 is, what all the pieces of that are, what you're going to have to file. So that way, you know what expenses you can claim, what deductions you can claim, and essentially set yourself up there from the beginning. Really, if you're here on not sure, other, or none, I really want to have a conversation with you and talk to you about, can we really pin down what you're trying to do, or can we set up some kind of structure for you so we can, for your tax purposes, so your taxes are much better. I'm going to take a real quick jump here. Let's see, good day. Oh, okay, just wanted to see if there's any questions so far. And this might be a good place to pause and see if there are any questions at this point, okay? So one of the things I really encourage folks is think taxes as you go through this, and think about the actual tax forms you're going to fill out. And even if you have a tax preparer, this will make life so much easier for them if you understand what kind of deductions you can claim. Because each of these forms, and this is kind of fun if you want to do it, well, I consider it fun. If you want to do this, is take each of the forms and look at how they arrange your deductions and your expenses. And in most cases, they're consistent across the forms, but there's sometimes where they're not that consistent. So if you happen to be a small business corporation and then you become a little bit larger, you're going to see a little bit difference in what you can deduct. So if you were a small business last year, small business corporation last year, and you used the 1120S, and then you jump over to 1120, you're going to have to change some of the ways you look at your expenses and your deductions there. All right, let me get back over here. So the biggest thing here too with companies, so we have you understand the dashboard. We have you understand what kind of company you are, what your business structure is for tax purposes. So we go back to our gear icon and we can set up the chart of account, or you can go in the transactions, which is on the left side, and set up the chart of accounts. And this is really the heart of your business here. And this is where, when I talked about the concept of operations, how you're receiving money and what goes in and what goes out. And many cases I've seen people, and QuickBooks is good at this. I think it is. at setting up a chart of accounts for you and has most of the expense categories and income categories and all the things you really need for your business. However, this is generic. You want to watch that because you may have some special circumstances, okay? So for example, with my business, a large part of what I do is webinars like this, paid webinars like this. And I want to make sure that my expenses for the webinars are kept separate from other expenses, like if I write a book or I write an article, so that I can track how well my webinars are doing. And also, if I can get a little bit of a different tax treatment of my webinars in the way I prepare for them. So with the chart of accounts, it's essentially just this ideas of what your assets are, your liabilities, your equity. So your basic, accounting equation there, assets equals liabilities minus equity. Having a brain mess right here, but essentially that is your basic accounting equation. You get revenue, you got cost of goods sold, and you've got expenses, and these are the different major categories you work with, and then you have subcategories from that. All right. So when you want to customize your chart of accounts, you want to see what your financial categories are, and you can add to what you have in QuickBooks. If you want to delete, you can, but I recommend sometimes not. Just don't use that a category because you never know when you may want to pop up and use that, okay? You want to make sure you customize, and that's why I have it highlight. Customize to fit your business. And one way of doing this is take a look at tax returns for the last 2 years. Take a look at where your expenses are, where your income's coming from. And if you notice any trends or patterns, you might want to make sure that you spot that, okay? So let's say, for example, I helped one place, it was a garden center. And one of the things they did was they sold statues. They sold these lawn statues and all this. So we were looking at, okay, well, that's buying the statues, of course. That was a category in there that we put in. Also, the care and storage of these statues and some other things around the statues, like the concrete and some repair pieces. So it was like, okay, so that's part of your cost of goods sold, part of your expenses. You may want to reflect that because it was a substantial part of your business after a while. And then again, align with the tax deductible expenses. So take a look at those forms, compare it to your chart of accounts. Is it being captured in the chart of accounts? And if it's not, you may want to add that category in, or you have something that's kind of unique and special and that you have to, tell the IRS about that's miscellaneous or something like that. You want to make sure that you are reflecting that. The better you can set yourself up to that, the better off you will be, because I've seen folks, and I've had to do this too, scramble at the end of the year to figure out, okay, I've had some kind of unusual expenses. So where do I actually put these? And if you can think about it beforehand, it'll save you headaches at the end of the year on the tax season. So before we get into that, any questions so far? I'm going to take a look at the chat. Let's see. If we're a 2-member LLC, S corp for tax purposes, which should we check? Well, that's a great question here. And again, one thing about QuickBooks now, like I said, I'm good with the software. Sometimes the tax questions will trip me up. I would always tell you, check with an accountant on this, okay, especially a tax accountant if you have one. But let's see here. If you're a 2-member LLC, depends on where you're incorporated in. That would be one thing I would look at, and take a look at the local regulations on that. And then with the IRS here, with the S corp, one of the things that you can check with, okay, and I know this because with an S corp, if you're a single owner but you have a spouse or one of your family members working for you, that could be considered a 2-member. And then when you would have basically, how am I compensating my spouse or the family member that's working with me in the LLC? So for tax purposes here, if you are being taxed as an S corp and you're 2-member, are you an employee? Of course you are. And is the other person an employee, or are they a consultant? So we may have to do a 1099 for them. Or what capacity do they serve in the S corp, in the LLC with you? Okay, so can get a little complicated there, but one of the things I would check on is the idea: are they an employee? Do they need to get compensation from the S corp, or are they a contractor? Do we 1099 them? And if you do 1099 them, be careful because the IRS has new rules and such about, for a while that, and you can thank Uber for this, where we can, is a person an independent contractor or are they an employee? And there's new rules on how you actually determine that. Okay. So can't give you a definite answer here because I don't want to give any legal advice because I'm not a lawyer or tax attorney. But I would say in this case here, look at how you're compensating the person in the two members, the two members in the LLC. And from there, you can kind of see what kind of form you need to work with. Okay. I hope that's helpful. All right. So we're in step 4 here. Now, this one seems kind of basic. Connect the bank and credit card accounts. I want to tell you the first thing a lot of people do that they make a mistake on is they connect their personal bank and credit card accounts. So when you're setting up the business, I would really highly recommend if you have a business, even if it's a sole proprietorship or, subchapter S, like I am, just a, solopreneur, have separate accounts. So have a separate bank account, have a separate checking account, just have separate credit cards and such just for the business, okay? Because you can get in real trouble with the IRS, and I know some of you all here probably know this, I know this, with mingling personal and business funds, okay? I've seen people, they do it, and then at the end of the year, they're trying to untangle stuff and trying to untangle what they did and trying to figure out what they owe on it. And the IRS will scrutinize you for that, okay? It's one of the audit triggers I've heard. Don't know that for sure, but I've heard it is one of the audit triggers if you have personal and business accounts mixed, okay? So when you do connect your bank and credit card accounts, it does take, it costs a little bit more, but that's the cost of doing business. Having separate accounts here just so that you can make sure what goes into QuickBooks and shows up for you is actually how your business is performing and not how you're personally performing. Now, there's nothing wrong if you want to have a version of QuickBooks for your personal use and such. I do it, but I make sure I keep everything separate, okay? It just prevents headaches in the future. But when you connect bank and credit card accounts, it's beautiful when it gets on the dashboard. You can see all the kind of neat stuff that pops up, how your profit and loss is going, how the bank accounts are doing, the cash flow trends, all kinds of different things for you that when you set it up and you got a good bookkeeper to set this up for you and they can set up the rules so that when it goes out there, QuickBooks goes to your bank account and looks at all your transactions and make sure it puts them in the right place, and you can set up the rules for that. Really give you a good, how are things going with the business? Just a good, quick health check. So again, it's in transactions. And this is on the left-hand side. And you can't really do this from the gear. There's a couple of steps you can do it from the gear with, but really I like the transaction piece. And the bank transactions works well. Now, if you're a company that also sells on, let's say, what's that one? Just skipped my mind there. PayPal. If you use PayPal, you use Stripe, you use some of those other services online to accept payments, and you can accept payments through QuickBooks also. You can also see your app transactions. You can connect to those. Okay, you can connect to those and get some good updates there. Hang on just a second. We got a great question. Do you need to give a 1099 when you pay less than $500? Technically, and again, just from what I understand here, not giving you advice, okay? So I'm not an attorney. You want to check with an attorney. But technically, yeah, do you need to give a 1099 when you pay less than $500? According to IRS regulations, you don't, okay? However, I do, because I just want to keep up with what's going on in my business. And even if I have someone that mows my lawn, that's a good example there. Mows my lawn, I pay him $50 a month. It's maybe not enough to really hit a 1099 thing, but even so, I'm going to give him a 1099 because I want to account for that in my expenses, okay? So if I have someone that I use infrequently, even so, I'll do a 1099 just so I have the information, and they're also covered, okay? So do you need to? According to IRS, no, but I would do it anyway because honestly, from years of being a federal employee before I got into business, I'm so used to covering my assets. And I just want to make sure that I've got documentation for all the money coming in, the money going out, all the things I'm doing with my business, because you never know when you might need that. If you ever have an audit, this might be a good thing to have as a backup there. Okay. So pretty cautious about those things. And okay, so I hope that answered the question for you. So we have the connect. I mean, it's pretty simple. You just go in there and you give it your information on how you log in online. And it's really easy. Sometimes you may have to do something with some of these services they have where you have to they'll put in some sample deposits or some kind of transaction. Then you have to report the number, what was the amount, something like 30 cents or 4 cents or something like that, just so we can verify that it's your account. But once you've got that done, it's all set for you and ready to go. Oh, give me a second here. So once you've connected, again, like I said, you have, you can go right into like the checking, you can go into your bank transactions, see stuff that is detailed to the account. And I like this because I can look at this and see how each of my accounts are doing. Just click on them, like the checking, the savings, MasterCard, and see stuff here. And also, and this helps a lot with your bookkeepers, if you have someone else doing the bookkeeping for you, you have maybe like, okay, we have 2 matches found. What category does this go into? It's uncategorized income. It might be an uncategorized expense, something like that. And you can use the actions here to make sure it goes into the right category and to make sure that your books are good and clean. Most of the time, as a bookkeeper, I'll say most of my work is just going through your transactions and figuring out, okay, where does this transaction go? Which bucket does this transaction go to? And that's where it helps when I have a good chart of accounts that I can look at and understand how your business works. And then I understand, okay, so you got these cement repair kits. What are those? With my, again, use my statutes example. Okay, cement repair kits. So that's cost of goods sold, or is that a business expense? And we've already discussed that beforehand, and I know where to put it. That way, when we come to tax time, now again, I'm not doing your taxes for you, but I'm helping you get your books set up so that the accountant that you send it to, the tax accountant, they'll have a good set of clean books, okay? I like to avoid, and we've all had this happen to us before, I like to avoid at the end of the year, someone comes to me with the metaphorical shoe box of receipts and says, okay, time to do the taxes. You're sorting through this, trying to figure out stuff, trying to remember on, here's December, and I'm trying to remember what I did in January, okay? So that's what we're trying to do here, is like we get it done a little bit at a time. So by the time tax time rolls around, it's not going to be as stressful. All right. And that's what I'm trying to avoid there, is just make it simple and easy for you. And, the QuickBooks system can only do so much for you. Although with the AI stuff, they're going to pop in there. They promise you more and more things it can do for you. We'll see that. But, still do a little bit at a time, keep your books going. And again, I'm a person, I like to see at the least how I'm doing monthly with my business, okay? Because I want to be able to spot any issues coming up. I don't want to be surprised. I don't want to be surprised at the end of the year. And I remember when I started running my businesses years ago, I would do that, wait till the last minute, then I would be surprised, okay? And sometimes it was not a great surprise. All right. So, all right. How are we tracking so far? Everything going well? Everything tracking so far? Is this useful? Okay. So we're going to set up sales invoices and sales tax. And again, this is the heart of our business. This is how we make money. We sell things, right? And we want to make sure that we have the information we need. We want to make sure that we know who we're selling to and what money we're collecting, and that sales tax. And sales tax can be so tough, all right? And I made a mistake, and learn from my mistakes. I made a mistake about 12 years ago with sales tax in Louisville. So, I was paying sales tax for federal, of course, and, state sales tax and such, but I forgot about Louisville in the sales tax. And 3 years after I was doing my business and doing my consulting, got a letter from the city of Louisville saying, oh, you owe us money. And they were very nice about it, but I owed a lot of money. And for 4 or 5 months, I was paying my back sales tax for all my services. So you want to avoid that, okay? And QuickBooks has a nice feature for you to work with this. But first thing with sales is understand who your customers are. And I know you really can't see this too well. I apologize for that. The screenshots here, try to make it as big as I could, but I wanted to make sure you got all the information. But the biggest thing, I go into sales, it's on the left-hand side, and I look under customers, and I make sure I get my customers and understand who my customers are. And when I get that, I will go in there and set them up. Oh, oops, hang on just a second. There we go. Okay, topped on. So like, for example, I have a customer, Amy's Bird Sanctuary. Now this comes from the sample company. And one of the things that may help you here, and I forgot to add this at the beginning, but one of the things that helps you here is that QuickBooks has a sample company online, and you can go up there and you can play with all the different features and such. So I would recommend, before you try to do something new in your books yourself, maybe go to the sample company. And all you have to do is just Google QuickBooks sample company. And this is the landscaping one, and see the new features, play with them, see how they work for you, and make some changes, because you can't break that. They're going to clear out that data, I think about every 4 hours or something like that. And just gives you an idea of how the different features work. And it's a good way to explore, especially if you have some of the, let's say you get the solopreneur version. You may not have everything that QuickBooks, the whole system has. You got kind of like a stripped down version. That's why solopreneur is great, but cheaper. And you can see what the other versions are and see if you really need that feature or not, okay? So anyway, what I did is I went to the sample company. Here's Amy's Bird Sanctuary. Made sure I had the basic information, name, address, any notes. And I use the notes extensively because I want to make sure that I understand my customers. And you can get a plugin. If you all have heard of customer relationship management or CRM tools, you can get a plugin for QuickBooks that'll help you with it. Now, there's better CRM than QuickBooks to do this, but if you needed a pinch, it's good to have that there. So if you need to make any special notes about your customer, you've got that. And you can create customer fields too, custom fields there. Because sometimes, I don't know, my business, do a lot of training and development. I do a lot of presentations, books. I have people that are customers and then they're partners. Okay. And you know, it's kind of interesting sometimes when I'm transacting with them. Am I selling them something? Are we working on a joint project together where we're both getting revenue? So I need to make sure I do that kind of custom field here so I don't confuse me selling something to them helping me get something. And someone put up here, for your information, I just found out if you are registered as a business in Kentucky, you must pay $174. Yes, that's true. Per year, even if you don't do any business. Right. And that's, you know, again, that's a good way to keep up with, you know, the taxes and also the regulations and rules in Kentucky and in the local area. Louisville has their own regulations. I know some of you are all from Louisville. Lexington has its own regulations. I will tell you a trick here. Excuse me. I have been using ChatGPT, and I use AI all the time. And I actually did a little presentation on AI tools. And the cool thing about ChatGPT now is it has something called deep research. And I will periodically say to ChatGPT, I run a small business. This is, you know, subchapter S, solopreneur, that kind of thing. Please tell me all the rules and regulations that are going to affect my business in the state of Kentucky and in the city of Louisville. And if I do it internationally, and then I just type, and then I just push the button saying deep research. And the reason I do that, it gives me a really detailed research report. Last one was like 10 pages of all the things I need to look out for. Now, be careful with AI. Sometimes it hallucinates, sometimes it misses things, but it's a good starting point. And it actually pointed out some things that I needed to know about. Like for example, in Louisville, I moved here in February. I had to get a sales license. Didn't know I had to, even though I sell online. I sell, you know, custom service stuff. I don't really sell any products, but even so, okay. So I put my application in, got my sales license, so I can do stuff for the city of Louisville, and took care of that regulation. The nice thing is, I also found out there was 4 other regulations I didn't have to worry about because I'm a service business, didn't have to worry about any kind of products I'm selling. If I start selling products, or if I get into something that might be a product, then I may have to go and take care of that regulation, okay? You know, it's just, as we all know, it's not that easy being a small business because there are the rules and regulations. And many times I found most the legal authorities are good to you. about it and understand if you overlook it, but you just don't want to be caught fragrantly violating the laws because, like I did, I had to pay around about a couple of $1,000s of back taxes to Louisville because of that. So we have our we have our customer set up and we have our different things. And we can take a look at, okay, what invoices, how much money am I making from the customers? I like this sometimes to do as a review just to see, well, who's profitable for me and who should I be paying more attention to in my marketing efforts? And that's kind of a nice help. So then we go into the products and services. So just a real quick thing here, you don't have to answer in the chat, but just think about what products and services do I sell from my business? Do you know all of them? Okay. And I know this may sound like a silly question, but I have seen some folks here that they start off kind of small and they're selling more stuff and they're selling more stuff. Just to give you an example, I worked with one company and they sell candy and popcorn and all these things. And what happened is that, well, they started off with popcorn and candy, right? Okay. Then they started selling some kind of knickknacks for the kitchen. Then they started selling some other, the t-shirts. And after a while, I said, okay, let's take a look at your product line here. You've got a lot of products. How are you keeping up with them? And then what are the cost of goods sold and how are you tracking the cash flow? And it's like, oh, okay. Now we're seeing why some of the money, you don't know where it's going. We know where it's going. And it's on these sidelines that you're using or working with that you think are making you money. But when you take a look at, okay, here's my investment in them. Here's what I'm getting back from them. Maybe I need to discontinue the t-shirt sales because we're just not selling that many and it's not really central to my business. I hope you see my point there. So that's why I like to look at what products and services do I sell? What are they bringing me in? Are they taxable, sales price, all these different things you can categorize, and you can run custom reports for you to do this, okay? Because like I said, some businesses, they just, oh, well, let's get this and we'll start selling that. And then after a while, they realize it's not worth the investment to do that. And you're taking away from your core business. All right. So here it is. And this is what it looks like on the sample company. This is your taxes and it's on its own side. And there's the taxes there. It's the sales tax, income tax, 1099 filings. Helps you do a lot of things. I really like the way this does 1099 filings just as a side. But again, this helps you when you're setting up the sales tax in QuickBooks. You can go through and it does a pretty good job of keeping up with the different agencies here. And I mean, I would say, like, take a look at this company here. This is a sample company. They pay to California. They pay to Tucson. There's an Arizona state tax. There's a Tucson city tax. And you can get the agencies you're working with. And this will help you just keep on top of all those sales tax, okay? Because sales tax can be complicated and each agency kind of treats it differently in the sense here. I mean, there's enough subtlety in the differences that it can get you in trouble. But this way, it can go through. And if it does it for you automatically, that's the best thing. Because other than that, trying to do your sales tax quarterly and trying to do it by hand can be a nightmare, okay? So set it up that way and have QuickBooks help you with that, or a good bookkeeper or a good accountant to help you with that. Set up once and you're good to go there. And you just need to make sure you're always, updating yourself. All right. Any questions so far? Okay, good. I think we're cracking along well. I want to make sure I save enough time for questions. So we're talking about tracking expenses and receipts. So we have these transactions, okay? And this is basically the transactions section here. And we can see what bank transactions, app transactions, when you take a look at the top here. So I have my chart of accounts and I want to make sure I'm keeping up with that. What kind of transactions do I expect to see? What is the model of my business? And I want to see what expenses are going to go into my business. And I really want to capture every expense here again. I want to be like that candy store. I don't want to be like that candy store where, oh, I was buying these things. I thought they were making me money, but what was the cost of getting those things, like buying those t-shirts and having them printed and stored and such? And what were those expenses and how they were kind of draining me there? So really keep a close eye on your expenses. If anything, like my grandfather who ran his own lumber mill in West Virginia, expenses are the things that are going to kill you. You can make lots of money, but if you don't keep it with where your money's going, that can be a trouble for you. So one of the things I also say, go to the gear log, go to the gear, okay? The gear up in the upper right-hand corner, and there's this thing called an audit log, and you can see it right there. You turn that on, and every time someone makes a change in QuickBooks, someone does something, they've signed in, they put in an expense, whatever, it's just any transaction, and I don't mean transaction, cash transaction, I mean any kind of transaction within the software, there's a log of it. So that way, if you have multiple people coming in your QuickBooks, you have a bookkeeper working with it, you may have an accountant working with it, you may have another employee working with it, whatever, you can see what events are occurring, okay? And this can save you trouble at the end there. And also, I recommend looking at that audit log on a frequent basis, because you may have someone come in, they've made some changes to your expenses. Now you don't understand what's going on with it. Maybe a bookkeeper, and they've made some changes with it, and they didn't tell you about it. And now you're wondering why you don't have as much cash on hand as you thought you did. Okay. And hang on, I'll get to your question here in a second. And you just want to make sure that you understand and keep top of that. Okay. I had one bookkeeping company. This is the reason why I got certified, because I got so tired of trying to go work with some bookkeeping companies that just weren't good. And I was doing it so much myself. I thought, well, I'll just go get certified. And it's free, by the way, folks. So just check that out. And it's a nice sideline if you want to do that too. But I just started going through the audit log and realizing, well, they were doing this, they were doing that, and that wasn't really right. They really shouldn't have changed that. And that's one of the reasons why I fired them, because they were doing stuff. And I really, when I asked them about it, I didn't understand what they were doing this for. Okay. So we have a good question. We are a nonprofit neighborhood. We have 3 checking accounts. Should we add all accounts? If you do have business, and when I say business, I know you're a nonprofit, but even so, if you have any kind of transactions, any kind of cash transactions, whether you're receiving money, whether you're taking out money, whatever, if you have anything that's working with your nonprofit in any of the 3 checking accounts, I would add all 3 accounts. Okay. Now, again, final answer, check with an accountant, check with an attorney, but I would say for me, just to save myself some trouble, I would add all 3 checking accounts. I can give you an example. I'm not going to give you names because it's actually involved litigation. Thankfully, not we. But I know a company or a nonprofit I was working with that we had an accountant who we had a checking account. Then he decided to open up another checking account and still getting funds from the organization and putting it in that checking account. Later on, found that was how he was skimming off money off the organization. Okay. So yes, I would have the 3 checking accounts. Honestly, I'm going to say this in a nice way, very suspicious of people, very suspicious of checking of accountants, even myself, which is kind of funny. But I make sure I turn on audit logs. I make sure I check these things. If there's anything that can tell me what a transaction is doing, whether it's money coming in or money coming out, I want to make sure I track that. In every organization, I've been treasurer. I was a church treasurer 3 years. I was a treasurer for another organization. I insisted on people auditing me. I insisted on with checks, if it was above a certain amount, like $300 or more, we have double signatures, and it's just using the term, a kid from the 80s, like Reagan said, trust but verify. I trust, but I verify. Okay. And I would say in this case here with you guys, I would trust and verify. All right. Hope that helps you. Don't mean to sound so suspicious there. All right. So one nice thing about checking expenses and saving receipts, you can download the mobile app for Quicken or QuickBooks, or you can get some third-party app out there, and it can basically take a snapshot of the receipt, put it in the right place. Hopefully, sometimes I've had to play with it a little bit, and just categorize. So if you're out in a restaurant or something, you got a receipt, you can just take a quick snapshot and it'll pop it right into QuickBooks for you in the right categories. Okay. And that's a really nice time saver. So let me go through this, integrating payroll. Again, if you're an S Corp, if you're a single employee in your S Corp, you do have to pay yourself compensation. The IRS looks for it, and you just want to make sure you just don't get in any trouble there. And like, for example, you want to make sure you pay your Kentucky income tax. Again, check with your attorney, check with your accountant on that. But I have found that this is, if you need to, now payroll and QuickBooks is an added expense. It can maybe a little bit expensive there. So you may want to talk to your accountant, maybe setting up something else, but I pay it just because I find it helps me out more. And there is companies, I've talked to these folks at Polis. I like them. The nice thing about this is they become an employer of record. So they handle all that payroll stuff. They handle all that other stuff for you. It's a certain fee each year. You're basically buying into a co-op. And the nice thing about it, having an employer of record is that you can also qualify to get health insurance. So if you're a sole proprietor or a solopreneur and you need health insurance and you want some of the other benefits of having, you know, a payroll taken care of for you like an employee, you can talk to these folks, okay? I don't get any money from them for recommending them. I'm just saying this is something out there. Investigate on your own, see if it's something you want to look at, okay? Let's see. What is your impression of the QuickBooks Online Live Expert, $50 a month? Does not seem cost effective. Before I go to them, and this is just my opinion, before I go to them, there's QuickBooks Community, and there are lots of people that you can talk to in different forums that you can ask for questions, you know, ask for help on. And you guys, you got the best one here, Kentucky Small Business Development Center. Talk to the folks there. Talk to the other business owners before you talk to someone with QuickBooks Online. They've probably encountered the same issues you have, and it's going to be more cost effective. Plus, you got someone that's really lived that. Okay. So before I go to pay someone, you know, the live expert here, unless it's really, really an intractable problem, I would just go ask informally my other fellow business owners in this community, the Small Business Development Center community. Okay. Because like I said, most of these folks probably ran into the same thing you have and probably have a great solution. So we have apps. So again, I highly recommend downloading the QuickBooks Online app. Gives you all these great little charts and stuff. You can really do some things on this on the fly with it. Again, I like the desktop version because I need to really get into it. But you know, in some cases, I want to see where my profit and loss is, my cash flow. Want to see how things are going. Helps me out a great deal. And then on QuickBooks, they have the app marketplace. Really cool. It's down at the bottom of the menu. It just says apps. And again, you've got an overview. Not that helpful there, but the find apps is great. And you take a look at the categories here on the right-hand side, get customers, get paid, all these different things. And you've got an app for it. Some of these apps may be free, some cost. It really depends on what's good for you, what you really need there. But there's thousands of apps out there that can help you with the business and help you extend the QuickBooks. And there's a great, I have to send it to you because the article is just updated about the 10 most useful apps in QuickBooks. If you Google that, you'll find some really good ideas. Monitor financial reports. And I'm looking at my time here. I want to make sure we have enough time for questions. Of course, you go to reports. On the right hand, you got the standard custom management reports. I find that most of the time, everything I need is in the standard reports. I rarely had to build a custom report. Okay. And if you go through there, the favorites, these guys here, these are my top 3. And then I add another one, which is the audit log. Where is it? Where is it at? There it is, right in front of you, Bill. I look at these on a weekly basis. Now, you may not have to do that. I'm just more, I guess the word is paranoid about my business. I just want to make sure I'm on top of things. I want to see where my accounts receivables are. I want to see what my balance sheet looks like. I want to see how the profit and loss is going. Audit log, I just want to make sure I spot issues early. So I run these guys and then I just see, you know, how are things going? How are things working? Is there anything that's kind of emerging that I need to pay attention to? And then you've got tons of these reports. And then with the custom reports, you can even go into them. And let's say we take the balance sheet and we may want to do something special with the balance sheet. We can just alter it, you know, for some specific situation and save it as a custom report so we can run it whenever we want to. So like I said, run accounts receivable agent summary, balance sheet, profit and loss, and the audit log weekly, just so I can spot things coming up, okay? Again, you may not be as paranoid about your business as I am, but I've ran into some issues I want to make sure I'm in good shape with. You know, monitor your financial reports. So this is, again, the reconciliation change report. And if you go into the section called For My Accountant, it's not just for your accountant, it's for you too. There's reconciliation reports, and you can see how they're doing. If you hire an accountant, like someone like me, a bookkeeper for yourself, see how am I doing with the reconciliation? And are there a lot of issues with, you've got so much money, but then we had to change the amount of money. How often does that occur? How is that affecting you? That's just a good way to keep up with if anyone else is working with your book, in your QuickBooks Online, and a bookkeeper, an accountant, or an employee, you can see what changes they made, of course, through the audit log, but also how are they doing with the money? Is there a lot of things that you need to look at? Some red flags there, okay? And that way you can make sure, for example, on this one, we had original amount was 3, current amount is 4. So the amount change was negative $100. You may want to say, well, why is that? What happened? What was going on? Did we give them a discount? Was there just a mistype? What was going on here? Okay. And Form 1120, Step 10, prepare for the quarterly taxes. This is Form 1120, and this is just an example of what the deductions look like. So again, my thing is I would take a look at this, take a look at my chart of accounts. How well do they track each other? And how am I keeping up with those different buckets? Because the IRS is going to look at those buckets of expenses and deductions and income and all that kind of stuff. And I want to make sure I spot the issues before the IRS does, because it's a lot better when you spot the issues first before the IRS does, okay? And then, you got your quarterly taxes. This is part of the self-employed one, which I like this. Each one of these has these. You can have the taxes, the annual, quarterly. If you have to do estimated taxes, which many of us have to do, this can give you kind of a what the estimates are, changing on your situation, on your income, that kind of stuff, and give you kind of more of a heads up. Let's see here. Okay. I thought we had something coming up, pop up in the chat there. So good thing to kind of keep up with that, and especially with the quarterly, because you can get yourself in trouble if you miss your quarterly estimates and quarterly taxes, as we all know. So kind of better to be proactive than reactive, right? And whoops, hang on there. So let's wrap this up. The whole thing here is the concept of operations, inputs, outputs. And then what here we have here is the value creation. And if you kind of put these in the different categories, and I'm just doing it roughly, you got vendors, you got suppliers, you got stuff that you buy, stuff you get, services you get, you do some value to it. That's the cost of goods sold, the operating expenses. You turn some value in there and you sell it to your customers. And there's our products and services. That's as simple as you make it. And that's what I like about when I think about my QuickBooks. This is the model I work off. What am I getting in? What's going out? How am I adding to it? And how am I accounting for all that in financially? And really, it's more about how the IRS defines your business in its activity. So you really want to talk to an accountant. If you haven't before, just even an initial meeting, just a one-time meeting, get things set up, or talk to a tax attorney, whatever. And just how does the IRS look at my company? How do they look at my activities? How should I be prepared for them? Because that's the group you're going to be talking to. And that's, if you make them happy, a lot of things in your life and your business will be a lot happier for you too, I think. All right. So like we talked about, do we want to use the QBO live experts? Yeah, you can pay for that if you want to, but they also have these nice QuickBooks communities. We have the SBDC, the Kentucky one. You can talk to those folks, talk to other business owners. It's always kind of good. And sometimes I got to tell you, as a solopreneur, I feel so isolated that I like to get out with the other business owners, even for lunch or coffee or something, and just talk to them about the business and have someone to kind of, bounce ideas off of. So again, realize what you're getting yourself into, and make sure that if you need real legal advice or tax advice, you talk to a professional in that field, okay? So I want to thank everyone. I think we have a few moments here for questions. So that's my company. It's on LinkedIn. You can go visit me. There it is. Gosh, that's a big URL. There's my phone number if you want to text me or whatever. Ask me some questions. I'll try to answer what I can for you. But again, I'm not an attorney, not a lawyer, not a tax expert. Okay, I will answer what I know from my experience. All right,
Yeah.
so thank you.
Yeah. If you have a quick question, just kind of get them in there in the chat and we'll talk to Bill about it. But I do have a question. So we've talked about the whole flow chart. You have sales and then chart of accounts. You have invoices coming in from your vendors. So what is the process when I get an invoice from a vendor and I log it in there as a payable? What are the methods to pay the invoice through QuickBooks to keep track of all that?
Okay. So, there's some good things here. I mean, you can set it up, and I've had people set it up for me too, where let's say I have provided a service to someone and I want to get paid by them. So they can, I send them an invoice through QuickBooks and they pay it for me. So that, do it for my system, or they've had sent me something and I can, be paid by that. So that's through QuickBooks if you want to do that. Now, if you don't, you can always set up through PayPal. or Stripe. If you are one of these folks that likes to accept checks, you can even set that up in QuickBooks, and just make sure that if you have a bookkeeper or you know about this, that a check is coming in, there's a special fund for that, and when you're going to deposit the check. And it's kind of an interesting little twist there. So it's like, okay, I get these checks, right? Now, we don't run down to the bank every time we get a check. So, we know that, and QuickBooks understands that. So it may be like, okay, once a week I'll go to the bank and deposit all my checks. And there's an account for that. I forgot the exact name, but it's something like, checks that haven't cleared or something like that. And then when I
Mhm.
do that, it counts for, okay, you made that deposit. I see these are the checks that went in. Okay, now we can clear out that. So there's like a holding fund. And then once we've done what we need to do, deposit them, we're good to go.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Hmm.
I think that's about it. Boy, this has really been a lot, and you explained it very well. Something that's, I mean, this can be complicated, but I really
Yeah.
appreciate you. You kind of set that up so it wasn't too intimidating even for someone like me. So I appreciate that.
Yeah. I mean, this may sound awful, but as a solopreneur, you don't want to make your business too complicated,
Yeah.
That's why it's a small business. Now, if you're some huge conglomerate, sure, we'll make it as complicated as you want to. But I mean, that's when you get actual professionals in there, and you got an army of accountants helping you.
Exactly.
Yeah, but it's like my friend with the candy store. Man, she was getting complicated fast.
Well, Bill, this has been fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us
Yeah.
today and spending
Well,
your time with us. Appreciate it.
okay, well, thank you all. And like I said, if you have any questions on LinkedIn, just link with me personally or link with the business. That's cool. And you can always ask questions, text me. Be glad to talk to you.
Absolutely. Janet, thanks for driving the ship as always.
Thank you. Thank you, Bill, very much.
Yeah. And thank you everybody for joining us today. And we'll see you guys next week. Don't forget to, I think we have a survey at the end, and reach out to Bill if you have any questions or comments or need Bill's help, please. He's there to help. So thanks everybody. Have a good Tuesday, and we will see you next time.